Monica Church, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing great. I have to tell you, there was this moment we were just talking about being adult enough to not really care. I had this moment. I really like actually turning my hat backwards, but my bangs sometimes hang out through like the front slot. And I had this whole episode where I had like Jim Carrey hair from Dumb and Dumber. It was like these bangs. And at this point, it's like, I can't be bothered. So now I have to turn my hat forward.
Well, you lost me at bangs, but
yeah. Dumb hair. I have dumb hair. I don't listen. You're a teacher. You're supposed to understand where I'm coming from.
I do understand dumb hair.
Yeah. And kids just being like, anyway, it is what it is. Listen, we've been talking for like 45 minutes. I really appreciate you. One thing that I've been trying to figure out since I moved here, and with every conversation that I have, every day goes by, it's like, okay, what the hell is Idaho? Because everyone moves here and they say, I want to preserve Idaho. Everybody who's been living here says Idaho's changing. And like, what do you know about what Idaho is? I'm in the corner saying, I have no idea what the hell is going on. And you happen to know a little bit about Idaho and at least have a sense of it. So like, what the hell is Idaho?
Yeah. Well, and I mentioned it earlier, but recently a friend said I might be, the oldest person in the legislature, not by age, but just by sheer knowledge. And you're right. What is Idaho? I think Idaho, there's a couple of things. First,
pull the mic a little bit closer.
Idaho's super independent. I mean, at least it was. Sometimes I am asking the same thing. When did we become such a nanny state? Like, when did we, start legislating from the state level into people's lives? I don't remember that. It certainly has never been, part of the history that I understand Idaho. Idaho started, it's the West. This is the West. It's about, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, start your own thing, do your own thing, enjoy the people next to you, but that's their thing. I remember in the 90s, I think, somebody might have to help me with this, but you're in high school, so you remember these kind of things. I remember there was an article that came out that said in Idaho, there are more LDS families, more lesbians, and more cows per capita than anywhere else. And you're like, yeah, right. That makes sense. Probably more guns too. But that was that was the world. John Waters, famously said, "I'm going to dye my hair hot pink and move to Boise, Idaho." We just kind of live and let live, and we are just so proud of our public lands, of our ability to be gone. That's always what I thought Idaho was. Growing up, I remember living in the city, right, Boise, and you drive south, and all of a sudden it's like, well, this is winter wheat, and that's mustard seed, and over here we've got soybeans, and then all of a sudden you're into like the craziest. I don't know if you've been to Craters of the Moon yet, but like,
oh yeah, I actually randomly went when I was in 6th grade. I didn't even put it together until recently because my dad got remarried and he went on a honeymoon, and then we hung out with my step grandparents who were from Glasgow, Montana, and so we got in their RV, like the Winnebago, and like Concord, California, and did this road trip with, Art and Louise, and we made it all the way, we went to Craters of the Moon. I just remembered it. I'm like, oh yeah, like some big lava tube thing, whatever. And then somebody told me this summer, like, oh, you should really go see Craters of the Moon. I'm like, what's that?
like, oh, I've actually been there.
I'm like, I went there. And like, we went by Yellowstone. Like, yeah, it was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Idaho's just, it's wild. It is still wild. 67% of it is actually still, wilderness or other public lands. So I don't know. Idaho to me is a place where you can be yourself, do your own thing. We are fiercely independent. We protect our neighbors. We love each other. The idea of Boise kind, people always say, it's odd in Idaho who come from, the East or even other countries, everyone smiles, and they mean it. Everyone smiles at each other. I think those kind of ideals have been shifting a little bit recently. I guess we can talk about maybe why that is. I think it's, there's a lot of different aspects to it, but To me, Idaho is a kind of quintessential libertarian ideology and local control. We don't litigate against or legislate into people's lives, but apparently we do.
But apparently we do. I wanna ask about that, but I will say that as a side note, I took my son. My son really likes lizards, like loves them. So I got a hold of this guy, Charlie Justice, who I very thankfully had on the podcast. He was retired Fish and Game, really into reptiles, snakes, and whatnot. And did you know there's a snake king of Idaho? There's like some guy who's in charge of all the people that go out into the wildlands and like grab the rattlesnakes and stuff, and then they sell them on the black market. I digress. Anyway, so I called Charlie because he apparently knew about the snake king and he knows where all the snakes and lizards are. And he's like, yeah, drive to Murphy, jump on Rabbit Creek Road, 3rd Cattle Guard and park on your left. There's a trail there. And I was like, that's my entire, because I was like, where can I go find lizards? And like, this is where you go. So I take my son at 6 a.m. in the summer because I had like got to get him out of bed because it's going to get hot. I'm like, bro, we got to go. And he's like, what? I'm like, get in the car. It's an hour. So we're like driving, but really quickly, we're in nowhere.
Yeah.
Like, we're driving down. It's like, like, this is wild. Like all these beautiful bluffs, like oppressively gorgeous scenery. It was like I was trying to take pictures. I'm like, I'm going to crash my car. Like, why don't you just look with your eyes? And there it is, Rabbit Creek Road, 3 cattle guards parked on the left. And there was this trail across the road. And like, it was also funny because not only was it was like, oh, we're in the middle of nowhere. Like, this is crazy. But the lizards, man, they are not messing around. They were the fastest lizards I had ever seen in my life. Like I'm used to like lazy bluebelly California lizards. And these guys were like, not today, Santa. Just running. And so like, we couldn't even catch one. We found scorpions, a ribbon snake. Like it was a wild time. Then ate at the egg factory in Nampa, which was baller.
Well, and I mean, that's an Idaho story. Murphy also has, and I won't digress, but has a funny kind of backstory. It has one parking meter in front of City Hall that is also a very Idaho story. And, and then you could have gone the same distance the other direction and been in forest. Where you aren't going to find lizards, but maybe you're going to find some deer and some woodchucks and all sorts of things. I mean, it's so crazy, this state.
Yeah, it's I've loved every second of it. So listen, talk to me. There's an aspect of the changing of the state where you have people moving in saying we need to keep Idaho, and they have this vision of Idaho, which is really interesting because like you got here 15 minutes ago. Like, do you know? Like, I don't know.
It's not even like it's almost like we have to save Idaho from becoming wherever. That we don't want Idaho to become this. So, we are coming here to protect you against, what we've seen other places.
Even with that, like, look, you're a teacher. You're more, I think, government history. But do you ever mess around with math? Okay, listen, let me just make my point. Like you're not going to, if you just have a point, like if I arrive here today, I'm like, I have to stop this place from becoming something else. And I just got here today. I have one point of knowledge. I have no idea what direction the state is going in. Right. It might be going the opposite direction. And I don't know because I haven't been here long enough to triangulate. Like, and if you're really smart, you're going to get 3 points of contact over a broad spectrum of time being like, okay, this is the direction. But people like me move here. They don't know what's going on. They know what they're leaving, and anything that even looks like close to what I left, I'm like, oh no, I can't go down this road. It's like, just hang on.
Right. Like, just hang on. Like take a breath.
Right.
And take a breath.
Nobody has an appreciation for the problems of California. Like I could go through like the number of, I can tell you specific legislation. I can tell you specific differences.
To assume that people that live in Idaho and have been here generations somehow don't know the issues of the states surrounding Idaho and haven't already insulated themselves against those things is just, I mean, what are you saying about Idahoans? You move here and say, you don't know how terrible it is out there, or I have to protect you from, I mean, we've been watching, right? That's why we're Idaho. That's why you want to be here. So it feels really insincere to come to Idaho and say, you have no idea what's about to happen to you. And so I have to protect you from that. It's like, of course we do, right? That's why we're Idaho. We have watched everywhere else and said, no, not here or yes here, or, we're going to try it, but we're going to do it the Idaho way. And so it's really, disingenuous, maybe is a better word, to think that Idahoans are somehow not equipped or smart enough or understand, the value of Idaho or how to insulate against these issues that have happened in other places. Take a beat, learn a little bit. Get out into the Owyhees, try and catch a lizard or 5 before you start thinking about how to legislate against things that aren't actually happening here.
When you talk about things changing here, because I do understand that Idaho, the story I keep hearing of Idaho is one of ferocious independence, individuals solving problems, in perhaps collaboration with government entities, but not reliant on government entities, which is like, listen, this is, right? This is the direction we're going. Mm-hmm. Okay. Like, this is the solution we found. Are you guys on board with us? Cause like, we're going this direction. And, that's the story I hear over and over and over in like all of these different ways of life, all of these different industries. And again, that's how I'm kind of like, okay, this is kind of what Idaho, when you talk about this, like pull yourself up, get it together, we're libertarian. It's like, okay, that's resonating. I get that. Why? Like that seems to be changing.
Yeah.
It seems to be getting different where it's like the state is coming in, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I don't know. Like the state legislature has a place in passing state laws. Like, of course they do. That's, we're passing a budget and we're passing laws and like, that's the whole point. Okay, great. But like the argument that I've heard from a lot of people against some of the legislation is like, look, what happened to local control? Like, right. Let us figure it out either within our school district or within our law enforcement agencies, or like, we're going to figure this out. Like, why are you coming in? So like, when did this shift towards more centralized control instead of more localized control start happening?
I can't pinpoint that, but I can say that we still have that. I mean, in some instances, it's like, oh, let's, give all the credence to our local entities. But in some cases, we don't. And I think, schools are a great example. It's always been hard, to figure out what you want to do, whether it was paying for college or now, finding different school choices. But Idaho has been really good about making some calculations. Like our 529 program, the Idaho College Savings Account program is fantastic. And, back in the day, it was like, this was something that not only the government, but your local school districts, everyone was saying, hey, make sure that you start a 529 for your child, so that you can, help pay for college. Options, you can, it's personal accountability. Make sure you can also write it off on your taxes. You can also borrow against it if you wanted to go to private school. You can borrow against it for all sorts of things, or take that money out. As your child grows older. I mean, we put all of these mechanisms in place for personal accountability. And, why all of a sudden we've decided that personal accountability is only for a certain thing and not for others, and that we see the government as the end all be all for whether it's paying for private school choice or for dictating what we can do with our bodies, though that is confusing. The other day we had a whole bunch of people down at the Capitol, my body, my choice for the mask mandate. But, that only works one way. When we think about my body, my choice.
I have to tell you, I love the pickle that everybody has gotten in with people trying to claim the my body, my choice principle, when it's like, okay, it's my body, my choice with, reproductive rights, like abortion. And then it's but like, I don't agree with that with like a vaccine or a mask mandate. And then the vaccine and mask mandate, people are like, my body, my choice. Oh, but by the way, abortion, you can't do that either. Like, and you were just in a wrangle. It's like, wait, which one of you owned this slogan?
Yeah. Well, yeah. This whole personal accountability thing, it's very difficult to understand, where we stand on all sorts of things. One thing that I found really interesting is, well, maybe I shouldn't say that. It's really hard. I mean, I've been a public school teacher a long time, and high schoolers, and like you and I talked about, I mean, you got to be funny. You got to, tell them the truth.
Yeah, right.
You have to be authentic. That's the thing about being an educator. Like, you have to be authentic. Teenagers, they smell inauthenticity, right? And they know a faker. And, it used to be that schools you had Miss So-and-so who was kind of a weirdo, and you had, all these different, kind of people. And now we're trying to say that, everybody needs to be the same, which, I don't agree with. But, you have to be authentic. And it's hard for me because the legislature feels like a place where you're not allowed to just say whatever, you want to say.
Dude, okay, check this out. This is hilarious. In my last years in tutoring, okay, and again, I had my own classroom. I always worked privately. So like, it was my classroom. Like, people, they would come in. It was like, you didn't have to be there. I didn't make you sign a contract. If students didn't want to come back, like, I refunded whatever money was left. It was like, no problem, right? This is total voluntary attendance. And this girl in class one day starts talking about how she's like, well, shoot. I was like, well, you're doing well. Like, keep trying. She's like, well, I'm just bad at math because, girl. And I was like, what? She's like, well, society has made me bad at math. I was like, wait, what are you talking about? She's like, no, I'm a girl. Like, people talk down to me about math. Like, I was like, listen to me. I'm a guy. I'm sitting here helping you with math. Like, what do you mean? She's like, I studied this, was her line. I studied this in my sociology class last semester. And I was like, okay. So of course I get into this. I'm like, first off, I'm not tolerating that kind of communication in my class, because I not only find it nonsense, but I find it counterproductive. I'm not interested in hearing what some sociology book told you about your math skill and how like teachers have beat you down. Like, I'm here to help you. Let's get you better. And like, we go into this big thing. So apparently her parents were not fond of that. And I know that because I was also working with her cousin. And they were at like a family event, and the cousin's there, and the daughter brings it up, and the parents are like, that's not okay. He can't say that. And what was interesting is the older daughter, not my student, but her older sister, was like, everybody knows Matt says whatever the hell he wants. Like, you don't even have to go to his class. This is total, like...
Well, but and both things can be true. And I think that's the point of being well educated, that you can go to a sociology class and think about the history of gender and how gender has been, treated, whether it's in a public school system or, just life. And you can learn about these things and then meet somebody like you and have that flip it on its head. I mean, that is what we want. We want to be able to take the big picture, that historically, X and Y happened, and then also say, no, there's also these other things. I think about, public education, 1970s, 1980s, the pay was very different, and you had most of your public educators were men. Most of your public educators were men. Starting in the 1980s, right, we really cut back on increasing wages. We started to see, men could make 30%, if not more, in the private field and in other areas. And so they've left public teaching, en masse in the 80s and 90s. And now, men make up like 1/4 of the public school teacher population. And it's like, well, if we had more men in the schools that they could look up to, maybe we wouldn't have such a problem with, young boys trying to find purpose and trying to see themselves in the world, that we have today. It's like you could have both. Like, you could have a sociology teacher who is telling you true facts about history and how women have been treated differently in different, parts of society and for reasons that harken all the way back to whenever, and then have a male math teacher who's like, that is baloney, and you are good at math, and end of story, and let's do this thing.
I don't disagree that we could look at a historical precedence and say, okay, look, this has happened in the past in this group. Okay. I don't disagree with that. Like, that everybody can recognize and, pick whatever group you want. But applying group historical precedence to an individual's life and lived experience is where I fundamentally object. If she wanted to come forward and say like, hey, in the 50s, people were pretty trashy to like women in education, and be like, all right, like, I wasn't there. You weren't there. Like, Whoever wrote the history book, if they're saying that, that's fine.
But I think that is what she was saying. It's just kids
hang on.
always make it themselves. They always
that's my
turn
point.
it themselves. But that's what kids do.
No. Hang on. What she was saying is exactly what you just articulated, which is not what she said originally. She's like, I'm bad at math because women have been treated poorly in math.
But she did that. A teacher didn't say you're going to be bad at math because she learned a thing and internalized it as herself. Because
and that's what I object to.
I know, but that's what teenagers do. They see themselves as the center of the world. You have teenagers, right? Like
not quite yet. But
well,
they're coming.
Get ready. Put your seatbelt on because that's what they do.
I know, but that's what I object to. And I think more people do that, though. I don't think it's just teenagers. I don't think teenagers are the only ones that apply group dynamics to and morph or ascribe lived experience. I had another girl who came in and was like telling me to unpack my white privilege, which is hilarious because I'm Mexican. And then she was saying, and I was like, what about Marcus over here? You know, another student in my class who was a Caucasian dude. And she's like, well, he thinks this way. I was like, you're saying literally based on his skin color, he thinks this way. Like, how can you ascribe personal lived experience and thought process based on skin color? And again, that's what I'm saying.
But I hear you. I'm not saying that that's not true. I'm just saying when young people learn a thing,
sure,
they are going to internalize it because they only really understand themselves, right? Sure, kids, it takes a long time to grow those kind of sympathetic or, even longer for those empathetic feelings of ascribing a thing to
I fiercely
the world rather than themselves.
What I'm saying is it's not just because she was a teenager. I think people do this in general, which I object to. Because one, it takes away personal autonomy, right? It takes away like pull yourself up by your bootstraps because you're destined to think like based on this historical precedence with this group, this is going to be my future experience, which I object to. Like, we have a lot of things that is like, that's not, and again, I understand
to that girl.
No, forget the girl. I get the teenager. Like I'm saying in general, I dislike this even with adults and our larger bodies of groups.
Right. But for her to hear that or read that in whatever book, like one of the best ways that she can adapt and understand that is not being the case or doesn't have to be the case moving forward is to see, women in math and science and these other places and have an actual physical representation that goes against that belief. So, you being a male teacher and saying no, which is great, but then also, maybe she decides she loves math and this is her thing. And now she's going to, intern for, a company that has a bunch of engineers and maybe she wants to do city planning. I don't know. Awesome. But she sees, women in there that then also counter that entire narrative. And, that's one of the important parts that I think we miss with this kind of identity politics. It's like, yes, and I also want to see representation in my field. I'll give you an example. I'm currently working on a project in the legislature and, for the last however many years, this entire presentation has been men. And, I'm like, hey, how about we have a little parody this year? And what I was told was, well, but we didn't have that last year or the year before or the year before that. It's like, well, that doesn't make it like, let's just have some parody now. Let's have a female speaker. Let's have, something different than what we've done so that we can just kind of recognize that there are, people in places that maybe we don't always see. And that helps, somebody else to come up and say, yeah, maybe I can do that. I think about the same thing with my tennis shoes. Like I wear tennis shoes every day, whether it's with a skirt or not. And that's one, because I'm a teacher and my feet are my money makers. Like this is how I'm going to live. I got to be able to get around quickly. But also so that, young women can see that you can be professional and you don't have to end up with bunions.
From
like,
like high heels?
Yeah.
Okay, but there's no middle ground where it's like, all right, it's not a 6-inch stiletto, but it's not what are those big fat ones?
I'll just say no.
The Hobu, the Humu, the Hama, the Hoka shoes with like the 3-inch things.
No.
No.
I don't. But why do I want? Do I need to look taller?
Well, no, they have like an excessive amount of padding, so like it's better for you when you run
Oh,
and stuff.
the
Hoka running
yeah,
shoes.
right.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call that an in between a stiletto and a tennis shoe.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. That it's like you don't have the stiletto, but you don't have the Hoka.
Oh,
like
right,
you
right.
just have normal
Right.
like wingtips,
Yeah.
or is that what they're called? Wingtips? I don't know. I'm wearing.
I'm wearing Reebok.
Yeah, I don't. Dude, what about like bringing Reebok back?
I
Like
love
the
it.
UFC is trying. I just feel like when we had competition in our tennis shoes, like when Nike wasn't the only
no.
jam. That's how
Are we
got,
are we about to go to the brown shoes? Are we
Oh,
public
no,
school brown shoes?
No, I'm just saying Jordan's that was so hilarious. Jordan's crushed everything, and like Nike took over, and like Reebok died. And it's like
Yeah.
we had like
Well,
when,
it
like
was-
LA Gear and Reebok had to fight with each other. That was awesome.
Yeah, right. It was a couple of years ago. I was so excited to see like the Nautica, Reebok, New Balance white shoe, the dad shoe thing come back. And then all of a sudden you have all these teenagers who are wearing our 90s clothes, right? With the pants that are on the ground.
The Air Force One
And
white shoes.
yeah, and they're wearing like the white shoes and the
Yeah.
white socks.
Dude,
and I
remember
thought, this
K-Swiss?
is great.
Do you remember K-Swiss?
Of course, K-Swiss.
That was that was lit. There was this guy Trent Holzman who was this incredible swimmer. He was gigantic. He was an incredible swimmer in like middle school. He ended up going to Cal. I went to Cal a year after him, but his fashion, he was like really good looking too. All the girls loved him. His fashion was so on point, and his K-Swisses were like blinding white every day. And here I am like he's just like barely showing up to the party.
No,
everybody's like
you
crowding around
gotta.
Trent. Yeah.
You got to have, I mean, if you're going to wear white shoes, they got to be white.
I don't know that that's true. It's such a lie. You know what white shoes tell me?
I mean,
that
if we're
you care
worried
about,
about
what
the-
people think. That's what. And I am not that guy. Look at this.
Says the guy that's turning his hat forward to avoid having bangs.
I don't care what people think about me. I care that I think I don't look like Jim Carrey from Dumb and Dumber. Now, look, I am one of those characters in real life. I just don't want to look that way. I don't want to give it up too easy.
So you agree with me, right? We wear comfortable shoes, and we don't need to.
We get on
don't need
with life.
bunions.
Okay, so look, how do we actually steer Idaho back towards autonomy, independence, self-reliance, and like limited government?
Yeah.
Like, is that a direction we can move to?
Well, we have to have some hard conversations and agree that. What is a
I
state?
don't agree to that. I don't agree to those.
I don't know. So I guess we're
You're
never
done.
mind. We're done here.
Okay.
Not happening.
ID gaff. If you work with teens, you know what that means. If you don't, you have no idea. It's like
Obvi.
no cap.
Do you remember when Ratchet came out? I was like, that's a great one, and it was only there for like a year, like bless 2017.
I
But,
know those were.
They had a couple of really good ones that they didn't stick with, but
I know.
All right, how do we fix it? How do we fix it?
Lit and Bet actually they have staying power.
Yeah.
Like this is lit. I appreciate
But
that.
if we say it, it's not good.
I don't care.
Okay.
I don't care. I can text
My
you.
daughter
and be like,
gets my daughter gets real
This is so
upset
lit.
about it.
Why?
Because we just don't use it right.
Listen,
I
you better
suppose.
come up. Have you heard the Sigma or
I can't.
like I can't.
I can't.
What's the opposite of Sigma? It's not beta. I was like, is it
No.
beta? But Sigma means like cool or awesome or
Right.
whatever. And
Well, and then they've got also the skippity.
Skippity. That's it.
Yeah.
That's the one.
Yeah, that's the one. You don't want to be skippity. You don't want that. You don't want that.
Well, you know these two. I spent like
I hang out with
hours-
teenagers.
I know.
That's all
I
I
spent
do.
hours a day for like 20 years just trying to understand teen lingo. And like I was really good. Like the day I left and moved here in January 22, I was at the top of the lingo, and now I've been like slowly dwindling. And now I learn from my kids, which is embarrassing because I was the trendsetter in the house. Like I had my finger on the pulse, and now they're in like my oldest is in middle school, and he comes home saying skibbity. I'm like, damn it, I'm out.
Yeah, right. Now you're that person looking on Urban Dictionary, trying to figure out what's going on.
Don't out me. Anyway, so
All right,
look,
back to Idaho.
Yeah.
Big Idaho ideas. I mean, first we need to recognize that the Idaho Constitution is pretty clear that the state legislature, really has very limited constitutional framework. Like we fund our public schools, we make sure that young people are taken care of, and we manage our economy so that it works. And right now we're just not doing that. Like it used to be that we could do, both and. It used to be that we recognized that the value of our workforce, so right now I say we need to increase the minimum wage yesterday. The fact that we have people still in this state who are making $3.25 an hour, waiting tables and hoping that they'll get a 20% tip to make it to what? $8 an hour. This is crazy. And that's not just, people always say, well, those are just young people who are working. Like, no, it's not. My teacher friends have to have second, third, fourth jobs. I've got 3, in order to make ends meet.
Wait, what are your 3 jobs?
Well, I teach in a face-to-face. I also teach online in the evenings. And then I also do tutoring, on the side. My husband is a teacher, we have to do, but we got to do all these things. Yeah. And so then you've got, educators, you've got nurses, you've got whatever it is, who are then also, working as servers and making $3.25 an hour. This is crazy. This is all crazy. And we know that increasing the minimum wage, making it so that people are comfortable, and feel like they can put food on the plates of their children, then they can start thinking about other things. We create these identity politics. We create these things outside in the ether to get people all upset, so we don't have to actually deal with the things that are really, really at stake here. People need to feel comfortable. They need to be able to feed their families. In Idaho, we need to get back to where our economy works for everyone. We need to recognize that more tax breaks means less revenue, which means that, people are going to be struggling in other areas. Like, let's increase minimum wage. Let's advance, school choice as it is, not private school choice, but make sure that the schools that we currently have are funded. They're funded well, that people, trust them. Let's get more people into substitute teaching. Let's, get people walking through these facilities so that they recognize what's actually happening. Let's get leadership, let's get the governor out there talking about these issues, going around and explaining to people what is working and what isn't. Let's get school kids out into the, the public lands doing things. I remember when I was a kid, we actually took field trips. We took field trips to Minidoka, and talked about what it meant to intern American citizens and fear and what that looked like. We went down to 3 Mile Crossing, and we actually did a crossing. They would take kids, across the river as if it was the, Oregon Trail. They would go down to the Capitol. We even used to go to DC. They would fly seniors to, DC as part of the public school system.
My brother got to do that. I did not get to go to DC.
Yeah, we've got to get back to where we can live and let live. And if you can't put food on the table, then you've got to find somebody to blame. And it is not okay for the state of Idaho or anyone to not recognize that we have real, true issues with the way that we have presented government's role in people's lives. Like, it is to balance our economy and to make sure that we have the ability to work, to live, and to feed our kids. I always said I taught comparative government for a long time. It's called the belly-fed analogy. When people's bellies aren't fed, they'll do anything, if you are seeing your children suffer, you will do anything. And sometimes that means, rebel against the system. Sometimes it means rebel against the neighbor. We're in kind of chaos mode all the time. It's very stressful to watch your child suffer. And I feel like that's the whole purpose of government, is to make sure that we don't have those moments, that, our system works for everyone. And then once it does, great. Now you can start businesses. Now you can think big thoughts. Now you can, decide what it is that you and your family want to do, and, what vacations you want to go on, what schools your kids want to, be at. But if we aren't back down at the base, if we aren't talking about the fundamental problems of people being sick, needing healthcare, needing housing, and needing a livable wage, then the rest of it really doesn't matter. And I think that that's what Idaho maybe, has gotten away from is really considering what Idaho needs to have that living wage, to have that life, to be fiercely independent. And maybe I'm, idealistic, or maybe I remember it because I'm a kid, or I remember things, differently because I was a child then. But that seems to have changed, right? That seems to have changed.
I want to talk to you for like the next 3 hours about a lot of this stuff. Please come back. I know today's working day. I know you got to get to the legislature. Let's keep this conversation going. You brought up a ton of things that I want to explore. I really appreciate you. I really appreciate this conversation. As somebody else who has energy and likes working with kids.
Yeah. And I think you and I actually share a lot of things in common.
I think we have a tremendous amount in common.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one thing I will say, I worry about servers for, the 325 is a bad idea. Well, okay. I don't know if it's a bad idea. I'm an idiot. But when you say I'm going to pay somebody 325 and hope they get tips, that's like, oh, that's kind of like, wow. I don't know anything about it. Maybe it's the best economic plan in the world. But I will tell you that there's this sushi place I went 6 months ago because I don't go out to eat frequently. And they have a robot serving stuff. So it's like maybe the market forces aren't working appropriately there because they're getting these commercially viable alternatives to human labor. And, obviously we need to have an economy that has functional, viable options that, hopefully help somebody make enough money to do exactly the things you're saying. And, if perhaps the absence of viable employment opportunities is one of the issues, which is why people will accept the 325 and fight against the robot for, tables. I don't know, but listen, please come back.
Yeah.
We will slot more time. I'll do whatever you want. Let's just keep this conversation going because I really like what you just said. I really feel that. And I think this is an important thing to flush out. And I'm not smart enough to flush it out, but I really want to hear more of your ideas.
I'm not either, but I'm willing to listen and to, think about it. And I mean, all I want, and I've said this, all I want is to stay in Idaho, to have my, my daughter stay in Idaho, to have her as 7th generation, have children that are 8th and 9th. And, the only thing I am good at is loving Idaho. The rest of it, I'm just winging it.
The rest of life.
But at least I'm open to admitting that, right? And that's the first thing. It's I don't know. I don't know. But I do know that Idaho is awesome. From the lizards to the, the tip top up by, Canada and the beautiful lakes, up north. It is awesome.
You know what I think? I think you're like a chick version of me. I feel listen, I'm an idiot. I just love it here. I'm trying to figure this out.
I know.
We should co-host. This would be great.
I ask all the wrong questions. I am either...
You couldn't ask more dumb questions than I do.
No.
In one day, I clock in triple digits.
I know, but I'm doing it in a place where I'm not supposed to be asking dumb questions.
Everybody expects me to be dumb. You're supposed to have the answers. Well, I'm glad.
Wait, isn't that a government subsidy? And they're like, don't say that. I'm like, oh.
Okay. Listen, you're the best. Let's schedule another one. Please come back. We'll do it again.
All right. Anytime.
All right. Thank you.